Hey everyone, my name is Matt Turner. I'm the editor for Comedians Conquering Climate Change, and we have a very special podcast episode today. We're going to have Esteban Gast, the wonderful host for Comedians Conquering Climate Change. We're going to have a conversation with him, kind of get to know who he is. Who is Esteban Gast? What makes him tick? What is his favorite smoothie flavor? What stuff does he have in his fridge? I know you're going to love it. Esteban, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. It's good to finally have a conversation with you and not just like cutting together your voice in the editing room. Appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks.
Yeah. No, this is amazing. Thanks for being here. And thanks for being a very patient editor for every podcast. People don't know this. They're 4-hour interviews that end up somehow 15 minutes. Nothing makes sense.
It's mostly Esteban just talking about himself a lot, and I just easily cut those out for the first hour. The solos you do, I know you think you're a good singer. You're not. Stick with comedy.
No, the world deserves to see my music career, and you're holding it back. But you know what? I respect it. I respect it. One day I'll win you over with my songs.
That's our next podcast. It's comedians chorusing for climate change. I don't know. I don't have a good C.
Yeah, it's still a C. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for giving us and the listeners an opportunity to kind of know who you are. Like, who is Esteban? You do a ton of stuff. So give me a kind of breakdown of who you are today and what you're up to.
Wow. Who I am today.
It's a big question.
Yeah, this is big. All right, are you ready for this 4-hour answer that you'll cut down to 30
That we'll have a
seconds?
1-hour musical in between? Yeah.
Yeah, the only way to me properly answer that is in song. I think I'm someone who comes from a lot of different worlds, and I mean that in the way that my parents are Colombian. I'm like 100% Colombian, and I like have go back to Colombia every year. My extended family's there, but I spent time growing up in Puerto Rico, which is a different place, in like Chicagoland, in literally like the corn of the Midwest, like 3 hours away from any city. Right. So these are like places that I live that are formative. Those are pretty distinct in different worlds.
Yeah.
I like taught high school for a little. I taught college for a little. I helped write this book on creativity and was like in the education world, and then left that to be a touring stand-up comedian. And to clarify, like touring, like making like $100. Touring is like generous. Like I was like, if you went to a small comedy club in like Topeka, Kansas, then you'd be like, oh, I remember Esteban. Like I wasn't. Sometimes people are like, no way. What stages were you at? And like, and I was like, oh no, I didn't go to New York. I went to like Jersey. Yeah. And yeah. When I'd go to New York, I'd do like a show on Long Island, the weirdest.
Oh, you were in Times Square? Yeah, there's like a side back alley. There was at least 2 homeless people and a few stray cats.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm huge with the stray cat community. It's weird. Once they get adopted, they're no longer fans. They unfollow me on socials. It really hurts.
Oh, man. That's sad.
Yeah, but I made a living from comedy, which in itself feels like a victory, regardless if it's mostly cats. And then I went and ran this eco community, which is like an off-the-grid community all about sustainability in Panama. And if you're like, wow, that sounds really interesting. Did anyone make a television show out of it? They did. I moved to LA with this TV show. It's called Jungle Town. About this community that I was helping run. I was like the president. There were like 4 parts of it, and I was the president of one of the parts of it. So it was very intense, very strange. I like lived in a tent for almost 2 years.
And who did that show? What was that on?
It was on Viceland.
Vice, right? Viceland.
It
Viceland.
was also on A&E and a few other networks.
Cool.
But it didn't do well. Because cats can figure out how to tune to the right
that makes sense
channel.
Yeah, right.
So we missed a lot of my audience. But it was a really cool show. It was executive produced by Spike Jonze, who's a hero of mine. So it's fun for him to be like, oh, there's something here.
Yeah.
And then America unanimously decided there is not.
Spike Jonze, you were right in a lot of things. This is not one of them.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, when he looks back on his career, he's like, wow, I had a lot of hits. And then that one time I bet money on Esteban. That's a miss. So then I moved to LA, and ever since then I've sort of have thought, hey, what happens if I combine everything? This education side, this sort of like, almost like sustainability side. This was we were trying to live a completely sustainable town, literally experimenting around sustainability and how we can work together to help climate change. Anti-climate change, just to clarify, we weren't on the side of climate change.
Right. Okay.
We were anti-change. Climate stay the same.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then
not confusing.
And then comedy and writing stuff. So the last few years in LA, I've been, I would say at the like intersection of sort of like entertainment, comedy, writing, like meaningful climate-y things, all that good stuff.
What a segue to the next question.
Segue.
So climate and comedy are the intersections of the podcast. And that's pretty important for us at Generation 180. So it was you're a perfect fit for that as far as climate and comedy. And then we know there's been a ton of progress in that space as far as climate goes, tons of work to be done. So why is humor a helpful way to contribute to the anti-change climate, the climate stay the same movement? I'm going to workshop that name. How does humor help out with that? Why is that an important tool?
Yeah. In yearbooks when you write like, I love you, never change. That's what we're trying to do to climate.
Right.
We're like, please don't change. We love you.
Right.
I love you, never change. I think a few things. When I was created in a lab when Generation 180,
I remember that. Yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of Al Gore, a little bit of Spike Jones.
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
Got it.
Spike Jones is like, do not tarnish my good name again. First I help your show and now look at you. I think it is so important. I think for a few reasons. I think if you talk to people about climate change, they get really serious. Right? There's like a weight to it.
Yeah.
There's like an, oh my goodness, are we really we're really going to talk about this. This is heavy. I don't want to ruin my morning sort of thing. So I think for anyone to engage with anything around climate change and clean energy in a way that doesn't feel heavy, in a way that doesn't feel, like here's more bad news, I think is really, really, like that alone, that touch point is really impactful for people to be open to the conversation, because not every time they have the conversation, it is doom and gloom. And I think the second thing is when we come from comedy in this place of opportunity or optimism, it is like from an informed place. Like I think sometimes I tell people that I'm like, oh, I've got this fun new podcast with this great organization, Generation 180. It's really awesome. And it's Comedians Conquering Climate Change, and we're trying to do this thing. And people are like, oh, are you like delusional? Like, what is your angle delusion? And I think I'm like, no, like, I don't think you realize that there's a ton of progress being done that, we talk about this literally on every episode. It's like a bunch of good news and some difficult news, right? We're also not ignoring it. But the fact that we come from this place of optimism and opportunity is from an informed place, is from, is from the work that you're doing, Generation 180 and other nonprofits and even other companies, and especially what people and some politicians, some countries are doing. So I think for people to engage with it in a different way is critical, because I think people are scared to talk about it. They don't like talking about it. It's like, I've got this spinach in my fridge, and it's like really old and it's like moldy, and I've thought about throwing it away, but I like don't want to. So I just like open up my fridge and I look at it, and it's like sealed, and I'm like,
yeah, because you're gonna have to smell it, right? You might get your hands dirty. You're gonna have to clean that. There's a lot of things involved. Yeah.
I don't know if that analogy sticks at all, but I think to invite people in and say, first off, there is hope and optimism. Secondly, we can talk about this in a way that doesn't feel heavy. Third, I bet we are more mobilized, and science shows we are more mobilized to change if we feel like it's not all over. Right? If we feel like we can do something about it, we can talk about it, and we can use sometimes humor to process pain. We can use humor to communicate breakthroughs that are less clickable, right? Because I'm going to click on something that says humans have 3 years left.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to like less likely to click on something that's like algae is doing something cool in the ocean.
Yeah. That reminds me of I don't know if you saw that Don't Look Up movie yet that everyone is talking about. That I noticed you weren't in there as a star cast along with Leo and all of them. But anyways, in the I don't know if you've seen it, but the very last scene, they're all sitting around this table, and it's all about this comet that's going to come to Earth, and they had all this time, they could have done something about it, but it's too late now. So they're all sitting at the table, and they're just making talk about nothing that matters, right? It's the coffee talk, it's the whatever. And so I think, I wonder if a lot of people feel like that's where we are right now. Like, we're at the table.
Yes.
It's happening. But what we're trying to say is Generation 180, and I think you do a good job with the Comedians Conquering Climate Change podcast. It's like, well, no, we're not there yet. Like, we are actually well in the beginning of the movie. And unlike an asteroid, it's not a one and done thing. It's not like there is a yes or no answer to it. There's a scale here. And I love the idea of how humor can just open up that conversation and just let people know, oh yeah, it's not all over, right? And not only is it not all over, but things are happening. Like, a lot of good things are happening. Progress. We have a lot of momentum that's happening.
That's great, man. That's such a better analogy than my spinach one. That I'm almost threatened.
Yeah. What's your experience on editing? We could swap these roles. I feel like I might have a comedy, at least a metaphor.
You coming in?
I got a thing for metaphors.
Coming in. Yeah, with your perfect metaphors. But I think you're absolutely right. I think instead of waving and telling people, we're not there yet, you guys, I think literally like a better tool rhetorically and emotionally is to come in with humor.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if we're in the business of helping people, shifting people's hearts and minds, helping people sort of like expand their awareness a little bit of what the things that are happening. The dominant narrative is fear, and fear works really great at cutting through things. I think a better way, a gentler way, a more human way is, I think, through humor and levity and like and optimism. And I think that is also an effective tool to shift hearts and minds in a way that they're like, oh, you know what? There is hope. We can do this. We can work together. Yeah, this isn't the end. There are a lot of really good things happening.
Cool. Well put. Let's shift over to like the people you have on the show are hilarious. I do have a lot of fun cutting your 13-hour. They just keep getting longer. Your 2-day marathons.
It's like Coachella, but only me and someone else with a microphone. It's 3 days. Yeah.
You have a lot of hilarious people on board, and it's super wide. Some are like stand-up, some are improv, some are writers, some have like policy backgrounds. So, and now they're doing comedy and they're doing really good at it. So, like, what do you look for in some of those guests that you invite on the show?
Yeah, I think comedy can come from a lot of different places. Sort of like we're talking about, right? There's comedy that is also like fear or frustration that you're like, look at this thing. I'm so angry and everything makes me angry. And
the Lewis Blacks of the world.
Yeah. That is my Lewis Black. Can you believe? It's Lewis Black meets Gilbert Godfrey, I think. Absolutely unbelievable. And I think those people are great, right? That this is not a criticism of them, but I think for me, I think people that I would love to be on the show and that I seek out are, one, very funny, but I think 2, curious and open. Right, and they can bring their comedic identity and their sense of self into the show. But I think this curiosity, this like, the comedians I think have this gift to like listen and absorb, take information and process it in their own unique way, and like call out inconsistencies or find the like really funny thing or find that small thing that they can make bigger. Whatever all these like this toolbox of a comedian. Use a metaphor like you have used Matt the metaphor man, as he will forever be known. But I think all of that all of that starts with someone who's really open and curious. So for me, a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't know much about this. Or some people know a lot more, right? We've got, comedians who have a background in, like you said, in politics and policy. Or even like MK Paulson's a wonderful comedian. His episode's great. And MK like plants trees. And I knew that. I knew that he like loves trees. But he had never connected that to climate change, if that makes sense. He had never been like, oh, I'm someone who's curious about the earth. He just was like, I love plants and trees. And I like, his parents have like a ranch in Texas and he's helped plant trees. So I think there's something beautiful to that I'm like, whoa, you're like, dude, you're thinking about these things, but you don't even know you're thinking about these things.
Yeah.
But I know MK's like relentlessly curious and open to things. So I think people who, I really think curiosity is, to me, in the way that I view comedy, in the way that I want to do comedy, in the way that I want to invite people to do comedy, I think curiosity is really the key. So they don't need to know about, they don't need to read Grist or like do some of this, like climate changey things that are difficult. I think they just need to be really curious about what that means. It's also a way to invite people into the conversation around climate change. It's like everyone's invited. You don't need to know a certain thing. You don't need to have read a certain thing. You can ask, there was a headline, it was like something parts per million of carbon dioxide or whatever, greenhouse gases. Yeah, someone's like, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, we should know, but I say it. And I was like, you're totally right to call me out for saying it. Let's do research and find out what this means together.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really helpful. I love that idea of inviting everyone to the table, because you're right. Like at times it totally feels like the people that are having these conversations are politics or massive companies that are buying solar or whatever. And it kind of feels like to some people that we don't, I mean, even that's something we say as Generation 80 is like, a lot of people don't feel like they even have a role to play. Like this isn't their game. And we're not even on the sidelines. We're like in the stands watching. And so I love what Comedians Conquering Climate Change does is say that like you have a role. Like you can get in the game. It's no longer like, maybe 20 years ago when solar was not something you could do and electric cars were not something you could do and all of these other things that you can do just really weren't easily attainable. Things have changed and things are different. And like, and sending that invitation in like a really friendly, fun way is a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah. Again, there's two ways to deliver that. It'd be like, hey, adjust your narrative. You're out of date. You don't think that solar has been affordable for like a while. Come on. Is genuinely one way to do that. And I think sometimes people feel rightfully frustrated in the climate change community that they're like, we need to move faster. You haven't done this yet. Come on. It's, and there's this sense of urgency, again, totally rightfully. So, and I think there's a role for someone, like me in the way that I can contribute is being like, hey, I also didn't know. And to me, in the way that I operate in the world, I'm like, oh, that's the way to have this conversation is like invite people in that way.
So, man, I think we've even answered this last question I wanted to talk about, which was like, what do people come away with? Like, what's your goal? If I had to pick a goal, what do I really want people to come away with when they're done listening to an episode or two? I know we've hit a lot on that, but like wrap that up for me, put a big old bowl on it, put it under my Christmas tree. Like, what is it?
Wow. It's February, so this is going to be both. I think it's going to be both like a birthday and Christmas.
It's my
gift.
Valentine's Day present. All right, we have just a couple days.
I think there's two things in the podcast or podcast episode. I think my hope and my dream is that people walk away and they feel like they are invited in the conversation. They are welcome in the conversation. My hope is that this is an opportunity for them to engage with this topic and they like want to learn more. Right, that you've got like a little momentum. This is a bit of that spark. This is a bit of that momentum. Man, how beautiful of a gift if someone feels like they're invited, if someone walks away and they're like inspired to just learn more, right? They like walk away with a bounce in their step. Because I think if you're going to make change, if you're going to sign pledges, if you're going to, push politicians and everything, it is going to be easier with a little bounce in your step, with like a little small smile on your face.
Yeah,
that
agreed.
is an easier way to fight this fight. And I think the second thing is an even bigger we are all invited, right? Like I don't have a background in whatever climate. I'm not a scientist. I don't have these things. So I think for a long time I thought, well, who am I to talk about these things? This is something I like read books about, and all these people are smarter than me. Bill McKibben is great, and I will just kneel at the altar of Bill. And then I was like, oh, the things that I am doing in my life, the things I'm uniquely good at, we can talk about climate change in this way. And I think it is, dare I say, almost like a responsibility for all of us to think about the way that we can show up for the earth and for each other. And I genuinely believe whatever you are into, right? I'm a strange comedian, education teacher hybrid dude. Like, for me to have a role in this means that literally everyone has a role in this. So it's like, one, invited literally to the conversation, invited to find out more resources. Every show has a call to action. And two, at a bigger existential level, you are invited regardless of what you do. Even if you're like, I don't know how juggling is going to be help climate. It's like, but it actually will. But I guarantee you it actually will. Anything that you are into.
It reminds me of that episode that you did where you talked about that Venn diagram of like, in one side is like, all right, what can you do? Like, what are your skill sets? And then like, what brings you joy? Like, what makes you happy? And then what's the good work that can be done? And there's something in there. In between, in the middle of those three circles, there is something. And this podcast kind of seems like it's pretty daggone close to your, you look like you're having fun. I can't tell. I don't know if you're just that good of an actor, but it looks like and sounds like you have a great time.
I'm a bad actor, so yeah.
I wouldn't know. If you were having a terrible time.
No, I couldn't fake it. No, I am, but I think it also is. I think comedians come on, and I'm like, yeah, what does this look like for you, for the ways that you're doing? It doesn't have to be a podcast. It can be you write a joke about it, or you write a story about it, or you're in the script that you're doing, you bring an element of the, like, there's so many ways. There is no right way to be like good to the earth and each other, right? Like, there's a lot of wrong ways to do it. Not doing anything is a wrong way. Like pouring oil into the ocean, wrong.
Right.
But if you're like, but I'm a surfer, it's like, I live in LA. The surfing community has done so much for the oceans and things like, and even in LA they just passed an oil like drilling ban. Like
no pouring oil in the ocean anymore. That used to be a thing.
It took a while.
2022.
But anyway, like I'm like, oh, surfers are like leading, in LA, they're some of the loudest voices. I'm like, yeah, everyone's invited.
That's a good gift. I like it. It's a big present. It took you a long time to wrap it. A little too many bows. You got a little carried away, but it's still a present. It's still gift wrapped.
A little too many bows is such good feedback just for me as an individual.
Ooh, yeah. Agreed. I'm the same way. I probably talk too much. I probably should have ended this podcast Q&A a while ago. But on that note,
no, this is great. Yeah.
Esteban, I really appreciate you talking to me, talking to our listeners. I think this is a really helpful way for us just to get around like, hey, what's the point of this podcast? Like, what are the good things about it? And then it's also nice to know you and just know more about you. You're a good guy, Esteban. And
wow.
I appreciate your work.
Man, hey, thanks for editing. And you're a good guy.
Oh, shucks.
No, thank you, and thanks for the whole team at Generation 180 who is genuinely walking the walk in terms of flipping the script, and I think being really, really thoughtful and intentional about shifting some of those narratives, and also just like, I mean, yeah, I can't believe, truly, you said this, I can't believe I get to do what I do, which is get support to like make silly jokes with people I love about a topic I think is important, and with truly like your role at Generation 180 is like, yeah, do the thing, and I think that is awesome. I think that's also, it's a risky bet, I think, because it's like the ROI is sometimes not immediate. And I think that is a lot of when we're talking communication and like cultural strategies, it's tough to measure. And I'm thankful that all of you are open and supportive of something that we know is really powerful and important, but but maybe doesn't immediately.
You hear that, Viceland, A&E? It's not about the ratings. Bring Jungletown back. I'm going to start a petition.
Ultimately, that's what this is about.
Point.
The goal of this podcast is to bring back Jungletown. Absolutely. The show that immediately failed.
All right, Esteban. I'll talk to you the next time the podcast comes out.
And we won't speak before then. Remember our rule.